HBAR holders, listen closely. This is not a drill. This is not clickbait. And it's definitely not another cycle of hype. What if I told you that the final phase, the one that separates early believers from those who arrive too late, has already begun? Not in theory, not on paper, but in real time, behind closed doors, in institutional boardrooms, in the corridors of global finance, it's happening. And the vast majority of people, they have no idea. They're still glued to Bitcoin's ETF approvals, still cheering Ethereum's endless upgrades, still chasing pump-and-dump tokens like it's 2021. Meanwhile, something monumental is unfolding, quietly, deliberately, by design. Because the real money, the old money, the smart money isn't looking for noise. They're looking for infrastructure. They're looking for control, for efficiency, for compliance, for a system that can carry the weight of the world's next financial chapter. And they've found it. Not in Ethereum, not in Solana, not even in Bitcoin, but in Hedera Hashgraph. Why? Because this isn't just a blockchain. It's a global trust layer, built not for retail, but for governments, banks, enterprises, supply chains, and tokenized economies, all governed by a council of world-shaping organizations, from Google to IBM, Boeing to LG, Dell to Standard Bank. They don't need influencers to tell them what's promising. They have internal research teams. They've stress-tested the tech. They've watched it scale in silence. And now, they're making their move. Quietly, strategically, irrevocably. They know what's coming. They've seen the writing on the wall. The era of legacy systems is crumbling. Swift is outdated. The financial plumbing of the world is rusted. And in its place, a new digital foundation is being laid. A future of instant, permissioned, audited, compliant value transfer, where assets, digital and real, move in milliseconds, where carbon credits, land titles, central bank currencies, and even your identity exist as tokenized units on a secure, scalable ledger. Hedera isn't preparing for that future, it's already powering it. And now, that future is accelerating. This isn't just a new phase, it's the final one, the endgame, the great transition from speculation to utility, from testing to deployment, from whispers to a global roar. And the gap between those who understand this now and those who wake up when it's all priced in will never be closed again. So if you're holding HBAR, know what you're holding, know where it's heading, and above all, know that your time to act is running out. Because this is your moment, the phase where the insiders are already in, and the window for the rest of the world is closing fast. So ask yourself, will you be remembered as one of the few who saw it coming? Or just another voice that said, I wish I had known. Let's break this down. Because to truly understand where we're headed, you need to understand what Hedera is and why the most powerful institutions on Earth are quietly positioning behind it. This isn't your typical Layer 1 project. Hedera isn't trying to be louder than the competition. It's not here to trend on Twitter. It wasn't designed for hype or retail speculation. It was engineered from the ground up to be the digital infrastructure for the next global economy. While most blockchain projects are locked in a race for headlines and market cap rankings, Hedera has been moving differently, building in silence, scaling in silence, forming partnerships in silence, winning without needing to shout. Because HBAR isn't just another token. It's the fuel behind Hashgraph, a radically different consensus mechanism that leaves traditional blockchain models in the dust. No miners, no gas wars, no congestion during peak hours, just pure enterprise-grade performance. Hashgraph offers what legacy chains cannot: unmatched speed, low fixed transaction fees, energy efficiency, and asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, one of the highest levels of security possible in distributed systems. In plain English, it's faster, greener, and more secure than almost anything out there. And that's exactly why the giants of global industry are already building with it. Let's name names: Google, IBM, LG Electronics, Boeing, Dell Technologies, Standard Bank, Avery Dennison, DLA Piper, Shinhan Bank, and more, spanning finance, manufacturing, law, technology, and sustainability. These aren't speculative startups. These are global institutions that shape industries, and they've chosen Hedera, not just as users, but as governing council members. That's right. Hedera is governed by a rotating council of up to 39 world-leading organizations, each one with equal voting power, full transparency, and zero incentive to manipulate the network. No anonymous founders. No central point of failure. No single entity calling the shots. Just distributed, corporate-grade governance, the kind that makes regulators and governments comfortable enough to build real-world infrastructure on top of it. While other chains fight over retail hype, Hedera's partners have been laying the groundwork for something much bigger, a trust layer for the internet, a global settlement engine, a platform for tokenized everything. So what exactly are they building? Not just ideas, live solutions, carbon markets with real-time emissions tracking, micropayments at a fraction of a cent, central bank digital currency pilots already in motion, digital identity systems tied to real-world compliance, tokenized assets from real estate to securities, supply chain platforms with immutable, time-stamped verification. This isn't some roadmap fantasy. This is happening now. And it's not just corporations who are watching. Governments and central banks are quietly studying the same principles that Hedera has already implemented. The U.S. Federal Reserve's FedNow system hints at real-time, final settlement infrastructure. The Bank of England and the European Central Bank are researching interoperable ledger models. The Bank for International Settlements is developing frameworks for unified digital ledgers, and their core requirements: scalability, governance, energy efficiency, compliance. Sound familiar? Because Hedera already fits the mold. This isn't a coincidence. This is precision positioning, and the signs are everywhere for those who care to look. So while the average investor waits for the next meme pump, while influencers chase vanity metrics, while markets obsess over short-term trends, the world's largest players are building the infrastructure that will outlast them all. And they've already chosen their foundation, Hedera Hashgraph. Behind the scenes, something has shifted. And not just slightly, fundamentally. While the public chases noise, while social media floods with charts, memes, and dopamine-driven trades, the real moves are being made in silence. Because here's the truth. When something is truly game-changing, it doesn't start with a bang. It starts with quiet meetings, private test pilots, strategic partnerships, and then one day it's everywhere. That's what's happening with Hedera Hashgraph. Let's look at the signs. The World Economic Forum, the very group that consults with global leaders and shapes economic policy, has already recognized Hedera as a key player in the future of public-private digital infrastructure. Not Ethereum, not Solana, Hedera. They've featured it in reports, showcased its governance model, and highlighted its role in the evolution of sustainable digital economies. Why? Because Hedera doesn't operate in chaos. It operates in order, and that's exactly what global institutions require. And then there's the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central banks. They're working on what they call the Unified Ledger, a complete, interoperable financial infrastructure for programmable money, tokenized assets, and regulated cross-border payments. And if you've looked closely at the BIS model, it mirrors Hedera's capabilities more than any other network in existence. Meanwhile, the IMF is quietly releasing blueprints for cross-border CBDC interoperability. And what do they emphasize? Energy efficiency, compliance, finality, governance. Again, Hedera fits. Ethereum? Too slow. Bitcoin? Not built for it. Solana? Too fragile. Hedera is already live, already scalable, and already governed by the types of institutions that these global bodies trust. But let's go even deeper. Behind the curtain, developers are building infrastructure tools. Banks are experimenting with tokenized securities. Governments are setting up sandbox programs. Supply chain platforms are integrating Hedera to authenticate goods in real time. And all of this is happening with barely a whisper in the mainstream. Why? Because this isn't meant for retail attention. Not yet. Institutions don't move with hype. They move with certainty. They don't need an announcement every week. They need infrastructure that works. And that's what Hedera offers. Quietly, efficiently, and without breaking. Even the partnerships tell a story. Dell Technologies, integrating real-time data attestation. ServiceNow, building enterprise automation. Standard Bank, connecting Hedera to Africa's financial infrastructure. The future is not being debated. It's being built. And the builders have already picked their foundation. Hedera doesn't need permission. It doesn't need headlines. It just keeps moving forward, block by block, deal by deal, integration by integration. And one day, the switch will flip. You'll wake up and find out that the system is already live. That the banks are already using it. That the value has already flowed in. That the digital economy has already moved. And Hedera is already at the center of it. And the saddest part? Most people won't see it coming. Because they never looked in the right direction. Because they ignored the quiet signals in favor of loud distractions. But you're here now. And that means you still have a choice. So, what happens next? Now that the pipes are being laid. Now that the world's most trusted organizations have quietly committed. Now that the old system is wheezing toward obsolescence. What's coming? We are on the edge of a full-scale shift. A moment where value itself will no longer be locked behind borders, middlemen, or outdated systems. A world where everything of value becomes digital, tokenized, and traceable. That includes currency, real estate, stocks, identity, energy, carbon credits, medical records, contracts, credentials, and even your online presence. And when that happens, speed, security, governance, and finality will no longer be luxuries. They'll be requirements. The global economy isn't preparing for this shift. It's already in motion. And the networks that aren't built for utility, they'll be left behind. Because we're moving from speculation to infrastructure. From hype-driven trading to real-world integration. And in that world, only a few technologies survive. Even fewer dominate. Hedera Hashgraph isn't trying to win retail attention. It's being positioned as the foundation layer of digital trust, a neutral, efficient, compliant layer for governments, enterprises, and even central banks to build on top of. HBAR is what powers that engine. It's the utility token at the core of every transaction, every smart contract, every data attestation, every tokenized asset, every decentralized file and message. Every verification of identity and compliance. It's not a meme. It's not a short-term flip. It's a mechanism of value embedded in the architecture of the new economy. So here's what happens next. Central bank digital currencies will go live. Institutional assets will be tokenized. Financial messaging networks like SWIFT will be replaced by real-time settlement systems. Compliance won't be added on later. It'll be built into the rails. And Hedera will be ready, not hoping, not waiting, ready. And as that global demand for scalable, compliant, secure infrastructure explodes, networks like Hedera will not just benefit, they will lead. And when that moment comes, retail will rush in. But the train will already be in motion. That's why this moment right now matters so much. Because once the utility floodgates open, once the institutions flip the switch, once the world realizes what's been quietly built beneath their feet, it'll be too late to catch the bottom. Too late to accumulate. Too late to prepare. And that's not fear. That's reality. So if you hold HBAR, understand this. You're not holding a trend. You're holding a digital asset tied directly to the infrastructure of the future. The question is, will you be positioned when the world finally catches up? Or will you be one of the many who say, I should have paid attention when I had the chance? Most people will miss it, not because they weren't smart enough, not because they didn't care, but because they were looking in the wrong direction. They'll miss the quiet signals. They'll miss the silent partnerships. They'll miss the steady onboarding of institutions. They'll miss the final phase, not because it was hidden, but because it wasn't noisy. Because this is how real revolutions happen. Not with headlines. Not with influencers screaming on live streams. Not with market euphoria, but with precision, with patience, with architecture that silently replaces the foundation beneath our entire world, while no one is watching. This is the part of the cycle where the public is lulled to sleep, where attention is fixated on the usual suspects. The price of Bitcoin, the next Ethereum upgrade, the latest meme coin sensation. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, in global boardrooms, in multi-country working groups, in enterprise development cycles, a new system is taking form. And while most people are waiting for the big reveal, they're ignoring what's already being built right in front of them. Because make no mistake, the future of finance, the future of identity, the future of value exchange and trust is not being decided on Twitter. It's being written into code, protocol, and policy. And the ink is already dry. While retail waits for the next big candle, while influencers posture for attention, the real players, the ones who never announce before they act, are making their moves. And they're building on Hedera. Not because it's trendy, not because it has cult-like hype, but because it works, because it scales, because it's governed, because it solves problems that other networks can't even approach. And here's the deeper truth. The new financial order isn't coming. It's forming now. Payment rails are being redesigned. Supply chains are becoming transparent. Digital identities are going sovereign. And data is becoming programmable. This is happening not in theory but in production. And Hedera Hashgraph is not scrambling to adapt. It's not pivoting to survive. It's not hoping to be chosen. It's already in, at the table, on the council, inside the conversations that will shape the next 100 years of digital life. This was never about hype. This was never about retail. This was never about quick wins. It was always about infrastructure. It was always about legacy scale systems. It was always about being the invisible engine that makes everything else possible. So now the question isn't, will it happen? It's far more urgent than that. How much will be built before the rest of the world even realizes what just happened? Because when the final switch flips, and it will, when the rails go live, the systems connect, and the flows begin, HBAR will not be a speculative asset anymore. It will be a strategic asset, a critical infrastructure token, a permanent fixture in the digital economy. And by then, it won't be about getting in. It'll be about catching up. But most won't, because most will still be waiting for someone to announce it's time. By the time they see the signal, it won't be a signal anymore. It'll be history. So if you're holding HBAR, understand what you hold. This is your moment, not to chase, not to doubt, not to wait for permission, but to prepare. Because when the world wakes up, and the silence turns into a roar, it won't wait for you. And when that day comes, you'll either be positioned, or you'll be too late.